Have you ever wanted to be the first to know if aliens really exist? Well, with Nebula, you can be! Nebula is the streaming service that's home to It's Probably Not Aliens, as well as our YouTube channels. And the best part? All of our content goes up early on Nebula. So when we break first contact with ET, you'll be the first to find out. That's right, you'll be able to listen to the next episode of this show before anyone else. Plus, we post bonus content that you won't find any other place. And the best part? By signing up for Nebula at nebula.tv/probablynotaliens, you're directly supporting the show and both of us. So don't wait any longer. Join Nebula today and be the first to know if this time it really is aliens. All right, I'll ask you a question, a kind of cultural signifier thing. I asked this, and I wonder if you had an explanation. I don't know our relative ages. Are you older than me?
I am born at the very end of 85, so I believe I'm a few years older than you.
Okay, so then you had the same experience as me. So I was talking to this professor about science fiction and aliens. And we talked a little bit about Star Trek, but only like a little bit because it was like the end of our time.
Sure.
And there was this whole thing about how what the Klingons represent changes over time. And that originally they were like a stand-in for the Soviets. And I was like, that's so weird because there's like nothing that gives Soviet to me from the Klingons. Everything gives to me is like heavy metal samurai. And that when I think of like Star Trek trying to take on like being anti-communism, which is extremely ironic, usually I think of the Borg, and like the Borg are like their like anti-collectivism thing. And I'm just like, I haven't watched all of TOS, I'll be honest. But like the only time I ever see the Klingons giving the Soviets is in The Undiscovered Country. Literally no other thing.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because like they have Chekhov, like they have a Russian on the show, but like I don't know, the Klingons in TOS, especially because they lack kind of the forehead prosthetics and stuff, they're almost like a Mongolian inspired. They feel very like that kind of Western version of like Orientalism. You know, it's like all these exotic people who are all about honor and fighting and all this other stuff. It just feels very like what, you know, us doughy white guys think like Japan and you know, ancient Mongolia and stuff was like.
Yeah. But then whenever I talk to people like about like the sort of what they were trying to do with them, they say it's like the Cold War. Guess because like, you know, Star Trek lore wise, right? That the Federation and the Klingons are in a Cold War when TOS is happening. But
yeah, I feel like maybe with the vague concept of like we are in kind of a standoff that gets militarized sometimes. But I've always thought that if you're gonna do a Cold War Star Trek analogy, especially for TOS and into TNG, you're looking more at the Romulans, right?
Kind of, like the first Romulan episode of TOS, right? They were like, no one has seen a Romulan in like 100 years.
Right.
And I think that the Cold War, like the sort of like big thing is that they're all on a tense piece because of the big war that they never seem to ever want to make a thing about, with like the Romulans and the Klingons fighting the Federation. And then they make the neutral zone as the result. And like, that's why that was where they decided that the Federation can't get cloaking devices, and you know what I'm talking about? Or
yes. No, I'm aware. It's funny because like TOS is that's the only Star Trek show I have not actually seen, and I'm kind of saving it for when we do it on our show. But they always reference about the fact that, you know, like Riker was on that Pegasus cloaking ship, and it was like a big political thing because, you know, the Federation's not supposed to have cloaking, or the Romulans sent that liaison because the Defiant had a cloaking device. So she was the one who was legally required to push the cloak button, even though she had no other job.
Honestly, like that is like one of the most hyper accurate examples of world building I think I've ever seen on anything.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That was like that's like
funny.
that's the kind of touch that made Deep Space Nine super special. Is like that's exactly what happened.
And I learned that like how realistic that was because my dad's a Marine and he didn't do this specifically, but like when there are nuclear weapons on a naval vessel, the Marines are the ones who have to push the button. So there's like on like these ships that have nuclear arms, they'll have literally like an office with like 6 or 7 Marines, and that's their entire job. Is if they have to push the nuclear button, they do.
Yeah, because above water, that's the same thing. Like the people in the the bases in the Midwest or whatever have to do that too.
Right.
Because you need like a minimum of 2 people to push it, and so 2 people plus 3 shifts, that's 6.
So yeah, see, there you go.
Yeah. So that's that. Okay. We have to make sure this doesn't turn into a Star Trek podcast.
Well, I already have one of those, so I could probably take a break from it.
Okay. So hi, Internet. Hello. This is a podcast called It's Probably Not Aliens, a show where we do real fictional stuff about science fiction, i.e. like ancient astronaut history or ancient astronaut theory and ancient aliens, all that kind of, we debunk all of the pseudo-history and pseudo-archaeology and pseudo-science. I'm now like adding to the tagline, like all of the conspiracy culture that's in the sci-fi genre. And
yeah.
You know this routine. So
I do. Yes, I've heard it before. Yeah.
So I believe you have to introduce that you know nothing.
I don't. So yes, you know all of the ancient alien stuff. My name is Stanford. I know nothing. I don't know anything about what we're doing here.
And I'm Tristan Johnson. And if you are wondering in your head, Stanford, the same person that we verbally abused all of last season, the answer is yes.
I wasn't sure how much of the verbal abuse to cut out because it was funny. So I was like, well, but I don't want your listeners to think that you're being mean to me.
Yeah, I didn't. I was going to let you have as much of that as you felt comfortable.
I was clipping it for my buddies on our show, and I was like, "This is the abuse I have to deal with over on the other podcast."
I mean, it was all in good jest. Obviously, we were just goofing. But yeah, I went over the topic of this episode with you briefly before we hit record, and you said you know nothing about this, right?
I know what a praying mantis is. That's the extent of my knowledge.
You know praying mantises mostly through the main thing, which is that humanity refuses to be normal about their reproduction system because, mantises have a quirk where if their females are starving, they practice something called sexual cannibalism, where they eat their mates if they're hungry because, that injection of calories means that the female has a higher chance to carry eggs to term and everything like that, right? But we decided to be very not normal about that.
Yeah, we have that habit.
Yeah. So, so I want you to like kind of, one of the things that we're doing this season, or this little batch anyways, is that I'm going to start the episode by giving people pictures that are like kind of like almost contextless idea of what we're dealing with. But I already kind of told you what it is, and there isn't really like a great picture of them, but I'm going to kind of tell you a little bit about what to expect here. So like,
okay,
imagine like being in bed, waking up, and you can't move your arms or legs. And then at the foot of your bed is a 7-foot tall triangular head with big slanted eyes, like flowing robes, and like the praying mantis forearms, like a giant praying mantis that's just staring and observing. And that is a very real image that a lot of people who have been claimed to have been abducted by UFOs have experienced.
So do they all include the robe? Because that seemed to come out of like that was an odd touch.
There is. So that's one of the things that really sticks out is that that purple robes are common, and there's like a lot of like we'll kind of get into there. There's a fair amount of details that are fairly consistent between these accounts.
Wild.
So that does stick out as being interesting. Well, we'll have a whole episode to explain, won't we?
Huh.
But yeah, like this is like, so it's a bug. It's a big bug. And one of the things that we're going to talk about today is that like science fiction has been using bugs as or insects as a stand-in for like existential political threats for over 100 years. In the times, it sometimes represented colonialism, sometimes the Cold War, and then sometimes it's just like the other. it's always like a mirror of the thing that we are afraid of, because I think that it's just because of aliens or insects are one of the closest things that in my mind come to mind for aliens, because they're so different from us biologically, right? They look so different. They look so foreign.
Right. And I mean, famously, as the movie let us know too, the only good bug is a dead bug. So
oh boy. Yeah. So like, yeah, these bugs, so like the insects, yeah, like the other thing, yeah, they're also just so like they have these like, eusocial societies with like ants and stuff like that. There's just like a lot of things that we project onto bugs and other animals as well. But like, and there's like the idea that these are like, that they're watching over us and that we're like being assessed by them. Because this whole season, we're also talking about how the overall theme of the season is that aliens are watching over humanity, evaluating us, assessing us, and sometimes doing culls of the population in order to get rid of elements that they dislike. And that sometimes they're messing with our DNA, or sometimes they're making hybrids or things like that, that we are somehow an experiment, or we are part of like the aliens' plan. And that like things like the Toba catastrophe, the giant 40,000 years ago, a giant volcano went off and wiped out a good chunk of humanity, that is proof of like the aliens made the volcano go off in order to thin our population. And that then they seed with like, they seed at specific times the right people, like Leonardo da Vinci and Nikola Tesla as examples of like alien interventions to accelerate technology at certain points in history. And like all this kind of stuff is like the bigger thing. And that in this lore, the mantises or mantoids or whatever you want to call it are at the top, but we are always being measured and observed by them, like a performance review that you'll never see, intelligent, powerful, and has already made a decision about your life that you don't even know about, which sounds like our fear of bosses, but that's just me. And honestly, a lot of people have that feeling. And when we want to put a face onto intangible forces beyond our control, aliens are a common one to go to. So that's what we're going to try to get into today.
Sure.
I'm starting by giving the absolute strongest version of the ancient aliens claim at the beginning, and then we'll kind of pick it apart. So in UFO and abduction lore, like if you like, this is not the light stuff. This is like the hard stuff. If you're like super into UFO and abduction lore, there's actually
These are people that like have names for the gray skin, like the Tausetians and stuff like that.
Yeah,
like that kind of deep lore. Okay.
If you're really into it, there's actually a documented hierarchy of the aliens. And so, the grays, right? The common, the ones that if you think of an alien, that's what you're going to say.
Right. That's Close Encounters of the Third Kind aliens, like big eyes, gray skin, no clothes.
Yeah, with the large black eyes, they have minimal features. Those are the ones who do they're the ones who kidnap you. They're the ones who show up in your bedroom. They run the equipment. And so they're understood in the lore as something like they're drones almost, like cloned workers that just kind of do the mindless work of the ones on top of them. And on top of them are what are called like these sort of like mantis aliens that are called mantids or insectolins. And they're typically reported as being between 6 and 9 feet tall, bipedal, and having a distinctly like triangular mantis-shaped head with huge forward-facing compound eyes, long spindly limbs, and frequently are described as wearing colored robes, apparently purple commonly, as a mark of rank.
Okay, so in the pantheon of alien overlords, they're like the Zeus, like they're the top dog, or is there one above them too?
Yeah, they're the managers. Yeah. So
got it. Okay.
They don't do any of the grump work. They're just the supervisors. They stand at the head of the examination table and they communicate telepathically and perform the most penetrating of the procedures, is the way that it was described to me.
Oh no.
Yeah. They do like the mental scans and the interrogations and delegate everything else. Consistently, they're talked of as being intellectually superior, less bound by routine, and the ones who usually understand what the program is for. There are multiple independent researchers working separately with hundreds of subjects and converged on the same basic structure, a drone class that executes orders for an overseer class that treats humanity as like a managed resource. I guess we're the ones below the grays. And so the specific framing that's used by the most prominent researcher in this field is that they view humans as inferior. We're ripe for exploitation, and that they approach abduction as a logical means to an end. There's no ethical concerns because from their perspective, they do not see us as moral equals.
Okay, so they're capitalists, basically.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That is the long story short. They're capitalism. They're us being afraid of capitalism. Yeah, because or the anxieties that capitalism brings upon us. Their attitudes described as identical to the way that like a farmer regards livestock or how a scientist regards a lab animal. Not exactly cruel, but like an absence of recognition that we're people.
Right, where we're a resource to be exploited, not a person worthy of attention.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's what we're going to investigate today, is that whole set of claims.
Right, and I believe having edited several of your podcasts by now, my job is to say that I believe this. Like, this sounds completely plausible to me. Like, I'm on board already.
Depends on the genre of guest you want to be, but yeah, that is a common one. But yeah, we're going to talk about mantises today, and as a Star Trek podcaster, I feel like you'd be well on for talking about this, because we're going to talk a little bit about how we see aliens and how we think of alienness.
Sure.
In like kind of SF literature.
It's funny because there aren't a lot of bug-like aliens in Star Trek, because throughout most of their career, that would have been way too expensive to do. So yeah, we didn't get the bugs to like Enterprise when they could start doing CGI.
Well, I was about to say, and also the main time that we did was the time that we were trying to was like when Star Trek was probably at its most reactionary and was trying to otherize, because the evil insects were space Muslims. But that's a different story. Yeah, everything about the Xindi the Xindi.
Yeah, you got it. Yep.
Everything about the Xindi in Enterprise was like the most racist that Star Trek had ever been in its entire history.
It's not good.
And it's including Code of Honor, I would say. So we're going to break down these things a little bit, one at a time. So
okay.
First, let's go into this idea of mantis beings, that they're real extraterrestrials that have this genetic program that are using Greys as field operatives with humans as the subject population. So I don't know, like, how do you even approach such a like subject to like understand what, like, how do you even begin debunking something like?
Well, right, because at this point it's on you to prove to me that this isn't true, right?
So why don't we let's start by digging into the methodology that was used to uncover these mantises. So the primary academic source for the mantis as overseer framework is actually all from one retired historian, a historian of 20th century American culture.
Okay. The amount of times that all of this stuff comes down to one person who just said some stuff in a book or even not even in a book is incredible.
Yeah, this is way worse than a book. You're in for quite a treat. This guy's going to be the main subject of the next episode, so I'll give you a little bit. But yeah, so he's a historian of 20th century U.S. culture, and specifically focused on how Americans interpreted UFO phenomenon. And what he did is that he conducted over 900 hypnotic regression sessions.
Oh my God.
With about 140 subjects, and constructed the detailed taxonomy of alien species and their agendas through the results of these regression sessions. These yeah.
And hypnotic regression, that's the same thing that got all those kids to make up assault charges at that daycare, like back in the early 90s?
Yep. Okay. That's where we're at, yeah. So yeah, hypnotic regression is this procedure where the subject's put into a trance and then guided to recover memories that they can't consciously access.
Okay.
A thing that the American Medical Association said quote, can involve confabulations and pseudo-memories, and not only fail to be more accurate, but appear to be less reliable than non-hypnotic recall. So the procedure has been well known to be extremely bad and can specifically cause a lot of people to remember things that they didn't actually remember or to make up things.
Right, okay.
And in 1994, they restated it, saying that recovered memories are of uncertain authenticity and that use of such memories is fraught with problems of potential misapplication. And that was in 1994. They have become a lot less certain about memory today.
Poof. Yeah, I guess like when your medical procedure is not quite as accurate as, hey, what do you remember? You feel like you should probably go back to the drawing board.
Exactly. Yeah, because like, you know, there is like a way to unearth locked memories that is not done through hypnosis. That is done like police officers will often do this when they're trying to or detectives when they're trying to get a witness to figure out details about something that they experienced. They'll often have you do stuff like think through, like walk through every step of what happened. And oftentimes new details will come up as they do that, right?
Sure.
It's not 100% reliable, but it's more reliable than putting somebody in a hypnotic state, which is literally a state where you become a lot more vulnerable to suggestion. And then if you ask the right questions, you can end up with them saying pretty much anything you want them to say. Hypnosis is a very strange thing. Yeah, I don't even know if it is even a real thing. I mean, to what extent anyway, but
right. It's odd. Yeah, it's certainly an odd beast because like it feels magical, but I guess to some degree it's not,
But the thing, so basically the psychological community though has concluded that hypnotic regression doesn't unlock memories, it just makes them up.
Sure.
Because of something called source monitoring. So when you remember something, your brain actually, like we have to learn a little bit about how the brain works, which is that you don't remember things like you don't have like a little, archive or library in your brain where you keep all of the memories you have. That's not how our brains work. We actually, every single time that we try to remember something, we take various fragments of it that are like stored in like various different places all over the brain, and then try to reconstruct it from those fragments and then fill in the gaps with plausible content. So like, that we have like a blind spot in our vision that we just fill with what we think is like what makes sense for that. And very often, like because we'll have like memories and stuff stored in all sorts of places, we just have to like fill in what is not remembered. And fairly often it's right because it's like, what you expect and based on your knowledge of things. But oftentimes it can also be wrong, very, very wrong, especially in critical moments.
That sounds very inefficient.
Yeah, well, I mean, it didn't, nobody designed it, right? It just kind of,
well, shit.
It's the result of millions of years of overlapping systems that just happen to work a little bit better than the system that was before, right?
Right.
Yeah, but under hypnosis, where you become much more suggestible, a therapist can help guide the reconstruction. And if you suggest that something is there, the brain typically obliges and builds a scene and makes it feel very real, and then stores that construction in the memory and in the emotional vividness as a genuine experience. So if you can be guided to create a memory like this and then have it feel extremely real, like it was a memory you actually had, and then afterwards, it'll sit in your memories like another memory, like a regular memory. So you can like this can, so like again, like as you made a really good case with like the satanic panic cases where these people were like, they were given the directions to remember, to make fake memories that then they felt, as vividly as if they were real memories. And oftentimes about like, family members or loved ones and stuff like that. You can imagine that is just so psychologically damaging.
Right. So basically it's like when you have a dream that feels real enough that you remember it later and like, did that actually happen or was that just a dream I had? But like
exactly
worse.
Yeah.
Huh.
So, and the process by which hypnotic regression produces an abduction memory is like that the subject already suspects that they had been abducted. That's like one of the reasons that they're going to see a therapist about this.
Okay.
They'll find a therapist who's specifically receptive to that explanation.
Sure.
And then the therapist will frame ambiguous experiences and use abduction terms. So alternative explanations are not explored. Then the subject's commitment to the abduction framework increases. The therapist validates that experience, and eventually they take on an identity. And when we take on an identity as like an abductee or any other identity, that becomes part of our core conscious or our core like concept. And we then struggle to like it becomes something that we want to defend because like anything that challenges your identity is seen as a threat.
Right. Okay. And I guess it's just impressive that these people who are specifically looking for abducted victims 100% of the time happen to find them when they do this regression therapy.
Yeah, especially with this one guy. And they all have a lot of very similar details all from this guy.
Is this going to be like a Usual Suspects kind of situation where he had like a poster of a mantis in the one side of the room and like some purple drapes?
You're not quite, but you're not as far off as you think.
No.
So there's one famous like former subject named Emma Woods who recorded her session and published the transcripts and audio. And the picture that emerged was like the researcher was that like the research, like that he was, asking leading questions, introduced these elements and treated the resulting memories as data about alien behavior.
Got it. Okay.
So she documented this over years publicly and with receipts. And so
did she do so in order to get him, or was this like an earnest publishing and she didn't realize how bad this was either?
that will be for the people out there. A little bit more we get into next week. We're going to get into this one in more detail. But
oh, man.
But the conclusion was that like, the evidence supports that these people aren't lying. From their point of view, they had real experiences, frightening ones,
right,
that felt extremely real by this like methodologically unsound procedure that converted that into like an insectoid overseer thing. And like that's sort of how that they basically created real traumatic memories for somebody, which is totally messed up.
Interesting.
That stuff that I said about memory, how it's like not a reconstruction is actually like, or is not a, it's not like a record, is not controversial. That's actually like one of the foundational findings of the study of memory. Every time you remember something, like, again, you reconstruct the entire memory every single time you remember it. And so oftentimes the more you remember it, the more it changes.
Yeah, I guess I heard a while ago that like the more you try to recall something, the worse it gets. So like if you're trying to remember something you really enjoyed, every time you remember it, you're gonna remember it a little worse. Is that true? Or
that's maybe like a bit reductionist, but like you definitely will. Like the emphasis, like if like say you're remembering like a day you had where like two really important events happened, the more that like that day will feel like it is just about those two events and everything will be related to it and that kind of thing.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so like one experiment that was done on this is that they had participants watch footage of a car accident and they asked how fast the cars were going when they smashed into each other. And a separate group were asked the same question, but they asked how fast the cars were going when the cars hit each other. And the smashed group reported significantly higher speeds. And then a week later, whether they had seen broken glass in the footage, and the people who in the smashed group were much more likely to say yes, even though in the video there was no broken glass.
Simply because they were asked the question using the word smashed.
Yeah, instead of hit.
Fascinating.
It's called the misinformation effect, or so post-event information. One leading question or a TV show or a therapist's framing can alter memory as thoroughly as the original event, and the person can't tell the difference. Our memories are shit, man.
I'm not surprised. And you know, I've crested the 40-year-old hill here, and so like I understand that my memory is getting worse and worse, but it's humbling to think that like, wow, just by someone using the word smash, my entire perception of something I saw could change.
And that's happening to us all the time. There's also a related effect that's called imagination inflation. So if you're asked to vividly imagine an event that never happened, like close your eyes and picture it in detail, your confidence that the event actually occurred will increase measurably. The more vividly that you try to imagine it, the more real that it will feel. And your brain will store that vivid mental image so that later when you try to remember that whether you encounter that scene, you can't find the like little tag that told you it was something you imagined. You actually remember it, but forgot the origin.
Oh, okay.
So sometimes there are things that you can imagine that you made up that will sit if you have it vivid enough and then come back to it later, you'll forget that you imagined it and it'll just be sitting in your mind as a memory.
Huh.
Aren't our brains just amazing? It is kind of cool.
You'd think the Mantis would have done a little bit better designing our brains if this is going to be a problem.
For real. And this is what hypnotic regression does. You know, they ask people to vividly imagine things, to fill in the details, ask people what they see, what they hear, what they're doing. And there's something called fantasy proneness, which is that we have this ability to vividly imagine and become absorbed in scenarios. That ability to vividly imagine and be absorbed in things is one of the strongest predictors of whether somebody is going to develop a false abduction memory. So like, it's not like a mental illness thing or like a history of trauma, but like the more vivid your imagination is, the more likely you're willing to, under hypnosis, believe that you were abducted by aliens.
Right. I had heard a while ago that like people who like do a lot of escapist reading in fantasy are more likely to be able to be hypnotized. I wonder if that's like a similar mechanic.
Yeah, because like hypnosis is one of those things where you need to be able to vivid imaginations and vivid stuff to make it really do the things it needs to do.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, like I said, our brain is strange. The other aspect of it too is the concept of sleep paralysis, which is that there's this and we've talked about this several times on the show because it explains so many of alien abduction narratives. And it's a universal, like, human experience that there's this like boundary between REM sleep and waking where your consciousness breaks down. So like the line between like dreaming and reality is gone.
Right.
But and when you're in REM sleep, your body becomes paralyzed. It's a normal part of dreaming because otherwise you'd be acting out your dreams and flopping around and doing all sorts of stuff while sleeping, right?
Right, which does happen to people, and like especially as we get older, I guess some of those mechanisms break down because like older people tend to thrash more in their sleep and stuff.
Things like sleepwalking and stuff like that can also be like problems
right,
in this mechanism.
Okay.
But the thing is that there is for some people in certain circumstances, there's a time where you become conscious, but the paralysis process that keeps you from doing that hasn't lifted, and so you're awake, but you can't move. And the parts of your brain that are responsible for dreaming are still active. So you are still like likely to hallucinate things. A recipe for a truly horrifying situation. Yeah. Because what happens is that if you are dreaming while your eyes are open, your amygdala, the sort of threat detection system of your brain, becomes maximally activated. And your prefrontal cortex, which normally modulates fear and applies rational evaluation, is mostly offline. So you're running on pure threat response. You're awake, you can't move in your bedroom, and your threat detection system's at maximum sensitivity, and your rational brain can't intervene. And the dreaming machinery that produces all of the things you see in your dreams is still running at full speed. So people report seeing things like bright light, buzzing, electrical sensations, levitation, the feeling of being touched or restrained, and most consistently, a feeling of presence, like there's something in the room, something near the bed, or something that intends harm.
And I guess they think that that's the threat, like response, trying to be aware and keep you alert because there could be something like concerning, and you need to be aware of that.
That's interesting. Maybe I haven't found the answer of that, but like that combination of things would definitely. That makes sense, like that your amygdala is like there because of that. Yeah, but the thing is that this hallucination is so reliable and so consistent across not only like different cultures, but like centuries. Like there are stories that match like sleep paralysis stories that go like as far back as we have records. Like they usually would call them like demons. Like
right.
One of the suspicions is that our story about succubuses is like a sleep paralysis thing, but also like some aspects of like vampires or ghost sightings or like any of these kinds of like there's a lot of times like demons when they're written about, one of the things that they'll say is that the demons like this demon appears and sits on your chest so you can't breathe, and
right,
like all of that likely comes from this like this like waking up basically while dreaming and then having all that stuff kind of go through.
Sure, but when did we turn from like the sexy succubus demon to the horrifying bug creatures?
Well, in the 20th century, actually, there's like a fairly good like thing for it. So, but the thing is that your brain is awake enough that you're trying to explain that why you can't move, trying to explain like why the presence is here. And the most threatening context your nervous system can construct usually produces something that is indistinguishable from waking reality. So it feels more real than dreaming. Yeah, and then like the morning after, you'll have memories of it. So it's not like it doesn't feel like a dream either, like a nightmare or something like that. But the thing is that we have seen it for as long as we've been human. Every culture has a name for that entity that sits on your chest at night. The nightmare actually comes from the crushing spirit. It was like the thing that in medieval Europe they used to call. In West Africa, they called it Kokobe. In Newfoundland, they call it the old hag. In Japan, they have something called kanashibari. And in every case, can't move, presence, terror, entity.
The best that we could come up with as Europeans is just like a big evil horse.
It's a scary horse, I guess. And so in 1963, what entered into the public consciousness is that a married couple from New Hampshire went under hypnotic regression to explain a strange light that they remembered only vaguely, and the entity got the new costume, aliens. That was Betty and Barney Hill and the first like alien abduction.
Yes. Okay. I learned about that on this podcast.
Yeah, it was a good episode. That was from Scott's, I think. And
yeah, that sounds right.
And what's interesting is that like when it comes to things that we fear, bugs come up fairly often as a thing that we fear. But then kind of as we get into this like this subject matter, I looked up that the sand people like in Southern Africa, have like a totally different relationship with praying mantises. So it's fascinating.
Really?
To the sand, the mantis is like a creator god, like a trickster shapeshifter thing, who actually like made everything, and then it threw his shoe into the sky to make the moon, and walks between the human world and the spirit world. So they're kind of sacred.
Oh, okay. So it sounds like the sand people of Africa are working with the mantids.
Yeah, well, like the mantids are like kind of like, the mantis is like kind of like an aspect of like this god that created part of the world, and that they're kind of sacred ancient symbols of like cosmic intelligence.
And surely this 20th century historian went and made sure to grab some of their perspectives to see if they had similar abduction stories?
Of course not. But like, yeah. But it's interesting how like sometimes like, because I study a lot of like Mesoamerican stuff, and how they have a completely different relationship with snakes than like our culture has. And like, so the same animals that might be like terrifying in one place might not be another. But yeah, different symbol completely. And in this case, we attribute these things to them. So like, that's the sort of last case I've got here as like the mantis, or the bit that like, this is my like last bit on like, you know, are there alien mantises? No, it is very much like this like, you know, past life or like hypnotic induction of memory insertion or whatever you want to call it.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
So not that they're not there, but that these specific examples aren't seeing them.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
And
because I'm still on Team Mantis here. Like I want to try to keep that spirit alive.
Yeah. Good. I good on you for trying. So the next part, we're going to get into a little bit of like the physics of things, to kind of put a little bow on the conspiracy thing. Like, there's a Marxist literary scholar who made an argument that explains that that like conspiracy theories emerge when the world becomes too complex to map, and we're not built to inhabit a system that is this vast and contradictory as something like the network of global capitalism, or like to deal with climate change. It's like too big of a thing, and we can't reliably picture how it actually works. So when we don't know, because our brains construct memories or construct things, we tend to reach for simplified theories that create the feeling of clarity. So we can put like a villain or a face behind the curtain on something like that. So that kind of fits into like the sort of mental heuristics angle.
Right. Okay. And I guess like, because it's harder for me to do anything about the fact that my boss at work sucks, but I can be as mad as I want to at the Mantis aliens.
Yeah. If it's a villain with a face and not a big impersonal system, then you can. Right. Okay. You don't have to do anything about it. It's not a thing that we can change. The other part that they would claim, and this is the part where I'm getting this is a very me getting on my horse about that, and that is like the fact that one of the things that bug me about the claim is that there even could be like a 7-foot tall mantis creature that is intelligent.
That'd be cool. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
It would be cool. Alas, have you ever heard of the square cube law?
I am actually aware of the square cube law. Yes, I read when I was like in college a discussion of the square cube law and like Jonathan Swift, Gulliver's Travel stuff, and how the giants wouldn't work. Yeah.
This is going to be a very big disappointment for Godzilla fans out there, but yeah. A law in physics called the square cube law. If you scale an object up in size, its volume and therefore its mass is actually going to increase a lot faster than its surface area. So this means that for something that has an exoskeleton, like an insect, that their armor has to get absurdly thick and heavy to support the more and more stuff that gets inside. This is why insects don't get above a certain size. This is why they are, in general, pretty small. And the only times they get big is in the water, where buoyancy can kind of help negate this effect somewhat.
We're gonna like. There's that cult that's trying to grow the largest lobster that's ever lived, right?
Yeah, I wonder how that's going.
I'm also curious.
But this is why things like the biggest arthropods in history, like ancient sea scorpions that were like 8 feet long, lived in water, because buoyancy would offset their mass.
Good Lord!
If they're not alive anymore. So that's good. The only time we've actually seen really big insects, like on Earth, is when we were in times in our geological history where there was a lot more oxygen in the environment for them to use to fly around.
Right. Okay. Now, I've seen Dune. Like, these are futuristic, like, super science fiction bugs, right? Maybe they were in the water, but now they just use, like, repulsor fields to keep them up or something?
Oh, I didn't even think of that. Yeah. Because
they're like super advanced, right? They got shields and force fields and stuff, right?
Stop doing their work for them.
No, I'm on Team Mantis. Like this is my job, right?
But basically, like if from what we know about exoskeletons, to make a insect the size of like 7 feet tall, it would basically crush under its own weight above the water.
Okay, and is that like an engineering thing? Like the exoskeleton cannot withstand those kinds of forces?
Yeah, like if there's exoskeletons made of chitin, then the amount, like the density that the chitin would need to get to, it would need to get so thick and so hard so fast that it wouldn't be able to catch up with like the sheer amount of increase in mass that scaling up an insect that big would need.
Got it. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, and then also on another line for for Godzilla specifically, the amount of heat that would be produced in an animal that large would cook basically itself alive. But that's a different aspect of it.
Why would it? Well, I guess, are insects endothermic or ectothermic?
I think they are cold-blooded.
Okay. But why would more mass create more heat? Like, I understand the sun is hotter, but like,
it's the amount.
I guess Godzilla would cook himself. I don't know enough about biology, apparently.
I mean, it's just like metabolism creates heat because your body is like, bodies are constantly doing different like metabolic processes. And the bigger you get, because there's like less surface area to radiate heat off of.
Radiate the heat. Okay, I understand.
It's the reason why like animals in the Arctic are so big and fat, because they're trying to minimize their surface area to conserve as much heat as they can.
And I guess like, thankfully, the Godzilla designers figured that out, because that's why he's got those big plates on his back to radiate the heat.
Oh yeah, I guess. Yeah, he just saves up the heat until he unlaunches like the blue fire stuff.
Right, yeah, his radioactive ray thing, yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, well, checkmate me. But let's just say that you managed to find a way to make a 7-foot tall mantis, like you gave them an internal skeleton.
Okay.
That's not really a mantis anymore, but fine. But if, say, you wanted to make a mantis have human level intelligence, how well would that work? So let's look at.
They got big heads, so I assume they got big brains, right?
Well, let's see. So let's take a look at like insects today. So the fruit fly, right? The fruit fly has probably about 100,000 neurons. The honeybee has about 1 million. How many do you think that the human brain has?
I'm going to guess more than the honeybee.
A human brain has on average about 100 billion neurons.
Oof, that's a lot of neurons.
So yeah, to get from insect intelligence to human level intelligence, you would need to increase the neuron count by 5 orders of magnitude, which is a huge amount of difference. And you would also need architecture, because the thing is that insects tend to have central brains with optic lobes, but human level cognition needs like multi-layered processing centers, modular regions for language and symbolic thought, expanded memory centers. You basically like have their brains and ours are completely different and wired for completely different things. And also, brains use an intense amount of energy, which means that it seems that to have human level intelligence, you probably need to be warm-blooded, which has an entire different respiratory and circulatory system than insects have.
Interesting.
Because really, like if you think about it, insects breathe by basically like holes in their body, like tubes that open up to the surface. And those also, like they just kind of like absorb oxygen through that, because they're small enough that their bodies don't need that much oxygen to survive. But to get to 7 feet, they would need to have much more oxygen in their bodies. So they would have to develop lungs. And the more that I say these things, the less this mantis is seeming like an insect at all.
Right, okay, because I guess like in order to make the 7-foot insect work, we basically have to make it not an insect anymore.
Yeah, it has to be warm-blooded, have lungs, and an internal skeleton. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So at this point, we're just talking about humans that are wearing mantis helmets.
Yeah, basically. Because like the thing is that also you need the right wiring, because human cognition also requires extended childhoods. Like we carry on childhood longer than basically any other animal, I believe.
Okay.
We have to have incredibly invested parents, because we are basically, because of our intelligence, we are essentially completely helpless for like a very long time compared to other animals when we're born. And just like a lot of complex social learning over like many years. So you need a species that raises its young and teaches them and passes on accumulated knowledge across generations, a thing that insects are not usually very commonly doing. So by the time you've made all these modifications, you've got an internal skeleton, expanded brain, warm-blooded, respiratory system, extended development, social learning, you've basically just built an entirely different animal that only superficially resembles a mantis.
Right. At this point, it's just a mammal. Okay.
Yeah. It basically would resemble a mantis in the same way that a whale resembles a fish.
Right, okay.
Which means that the form is just like a costume at that point. So what you're really describing is not so much like a mantis, but like what's like an example of convergent evolution.
Okay.
Have you heard of this term before?
Like how everything is crabs.
Carcinization is a thing that's a different thing, and it is.
Oh, is it?
It's kind of similar, but like people have vastly overstated carcinization, and there's also decarcinization as well. But like in evolution, we have seen several cases where unrelated lineages will independently arrive at the same sort of conclusion because they're solving the same problem. Like an example would be like wings. Wings have evolved separately many times in birds and bats and insects. There's completely different structures, but they're trying to solve the same problem in basically the same way, just with different mechanical approaches, right?
Got it, okay.
Because they all live on Earth where we have the same air, the same gravity, and they are trying to get lift from air. Just they have completely different ways of doing it, and their solutions did converge on the concept of having wings.
Oh, wait, gravity. So what if the mantids were on a planet with less gravity? Would they be able to be bigger?
That could change it, but then being on Earth would be lethal to them.
Well, that's why they abduct us from Earth to their less gravity spaceships.
Oh man, you are selling this harder than I thought.
I'm on Team Mantis. I'm sorry.
Okay. Another example of convergent evolution is that eyes have evolved separately several times.
They have? That's fascinating.
Yeah. The eyes that vertebrates have evolved completely independently of the one that cephalopods have. Cephalopods being like squid and octopi and stuff like that.
Right. Oh, I guess that makes sense because like insects and stuff, they have weird eyes, right? Like with a bunch of different hexes or something going on in them.
Yeah. But the thing is that actually the structure of our eye and the cephalopod eye, like this is how convergent it can get. It was so similar that scientists actually spent decades debating whether they actually were independent of each other.
Huh.
At the same time, they both had the same problem. They were trying to focus light onto a sensor. And so they were similar solution to the same physics problem, right?
Right, because it's physics, right? Like lenses are an established physical concept, and they can only get so different.
Yep.
Okay.
Another one that you'll probably see too is that there's a body type in the water that seems to happen for any swimming animal. You know, sharks, fish, dolphins, whales. Even like ancient times, you had like ichthyosauruses in like the dinosaur times. All of them have like the same kind of body shape because
it's hydrodynamic.
Yeah, this kind of like torpedo-shaped streamlined body because of the physics of moving fast through water, right?
Right. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So if you are evolving on a world that has similar physics, similar challenges, similar sensory environments, you might end up with similar solutions. So wings, eyes, grasping appendages, forward-facing binocular vision are convergent attractors. Like lots of predators have forward-facing binocular vision because you want to have 3D, three-dimensional vision or whatever, depth perception.
Right, okay.
So an alien species that evolved to hunt or to manipulate tools or to perceive in 3 dimensions might actually have some features that kind of look familiar. That's sort of where convergent evolution is going to go, right?
So other planets might also have crabs.
Or something like they might have, for example, if there's another intelligent species out there that they have probably evolved, they would have had to have highly evolved social intelligence or highly evolved social power and tool manipulation. So they probably will have something that is used for manipulating objects and have something for communicating with other members of its species. What that will be depends on the physics of the place, because like if they live in a place where there's a lot of sound, they might not develop hearing and speech. They might communicate some other way or something like that.
Do you know, and this might be kind of a tangent, but do you know if there is any kind of research on how dexterous a creature has to be in order to theoretically evolve tool use? Because like you see in Star Trek all the time, these people in all these prostheses, like their fingers are too big and clumsy to do any kind of fine manipulation because they're wearing gloves that are, painted blue or whatever. But is there any kind of research on like I don't know, praying mantis arms don't look like they could do a lot with like a screwdriver, for example.
That is true. Yeah. I don't know of anything like that, but that is a pretty good point.
I've always wondered that because you see all these, all these aliens in various fictions. And it's like, I don't know how their hands are working a pair of like pliers. It looks very difficult for them.
Yeah, that's good. Well, let's bring this to the Mantis thing, right? Like, it is actually kind of plausible that we might see some features that look kind of Mantis-like. For example, forward-facing eyes, or grasping limbs, or any like kind of the patience that ambush predators have. These are solutions to real problems that that have evolved multiple times on Earth and could happen again.
Okay.
But there's some things that definitely would not converge. Like, for example, exoskeletal architecture, especially for the size and gravity and everything. Compound eyes would not evolve the same exact way. Segmented, like, having a head, a thorax, and an abdomen would not necessarily happen the exact way.
Okay.
The specific geometry of the praying mantis shape. Those are solutions to being,
right.
Specifically because all of those are solutions to being a small terrestrial ambush predator, not like a
right. Okay.
On Earth. So a mantis alien that looks like a mantis is because we designed it from a mantis, not because a mantis is what intelligence would look like.
Right. That makes sense.
But the thing is, there are some of these things that are here, like, for example, the praying mantis is the only insect on Earth that is confirmed to have stereoscopic depth perception, which I think is pretty neat. It actually
really the only one
that we've confirmed.
And is that all praying? Because I did come prepared with a bunch of praying mantis facts. Weirdly, not that one. There are like hundreds of species of praying mantis. Are they all stereoscopic vision? Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to send you to Wikipedia right there.
No, I want to try to see what praying mantis like covers. I can't guarantee, but it seems like the entire order of mantises are what we call the praying mantis. So,
okay.
So
interesting.
We'll go with yes until corrections episode that comes up telling me otherwise.
Sure.
Yeah. The other thing too is that mantises can strike in 50 to 70 milliseconds. Their whole evolution is around striking fast enough that prey can't respond to them.
Right. Okay. I guess like, as an intuition, it feels like bugs generally move faster than we understand. Is that true? Because like there's those little spiders that seem to jump so fast you can't even see them.
I think that because they're cold-blooded, they tend to like cold-blooded animals tend to want to conserve movement, right? Like warm-blooded animals move around more. Cold-blooded animals, they tend to try to conserve their energy. And so I think that has resulted in a lot of cold-blooded predators becoming ambush predators. And ambush predators are all about not moving for long periods of time and then attacking very fast. So that probably fits into that. And I also think it's just super cool. Like, I mean, everybody knows like the sort of like rat, like the spine, their blades or whatever you want to call them, or scissors, are like honed over millions of years into like these perfect like grasping tools to like trap prey. On top of that, like they're really good at being completely still. Some of them even, as you might have probably come up in the research, some of them can even disguise themselves as flowers by just being so silent and still for so long.
Wild. No, I didn't see that.
Yeah, there's one species of mantis that looks like a plant or looks like a flower.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I have seen that. There's one that looks like an orchid or something. Yeah.
Exactly. And the whole thing is that they can hold still. And their whole idea is that they hold so still that animals will disregard them and just turn them into part of the landscape.
Right.
So that they can track it while it's perfectly motionless until it gets into range. And, there is, of course, the most famous thing that I think that they're known for, which is the sexual cannibalism, which is that it's not actually a common thing. It's not even, it's a documented thing, but it's much weirder. But they've been doing, apparently, sexual cannibalism amongst mantises or mantids has been done for over 400 million years. So they have been doing it since before dinosaurs.
Since before the concept of dinosaurs.
Yeah, it's like mantises have been around for that long. They are like kind of like, they're in this class of like sharks and crocodiles for being like, this form is so robust and so good at doing what it does that they have not had to evolve a whole lot over like this many years, because the general plan does seem to be worked. So, and this is the thing we always think about when we think of like evolution, because evolution is not like, we need to stop thinking of like humans as more evolved than mantids, because in many ways we are less. We have just arrived on the scene recently, intelligence is not necessarily a thing that helps with selection. I mean, just look at us. We're intelligent and we are almost going to cause a mass extinction event on our own planet.
Oh, and you're suggesting that that's not a good idea.
Not typically, especially if you want to survive as a species.
Okay.
But the mantis has been doing this for like 400 million years. And so they have like a very, like almost like perfect solution for ambush predating. And so they're very successful at the thing they do. So you don't need to make them, like making them 4 or 7 feet tall and intelligent wouldn't actually improve them very much. It would probably cause more problems than it solves.
Oh, okay. So your argument then is that mantis aliens don't make any sense because mantises are so good at being bugs that they would never need to be spacefaring human analogs.
Yeah. Like humans, I mean, the jury's kind of still working through this one, but humans developed intelligence because we were like a tree-faring animal species that then had to evolve in a changing climate to grassland and savanna, and had to like evolve like all of the different ways that we do things in order to like survive that transition. And then we just kind of kept going because it was a very successful strategy for us.
Right. We lose the trees and then we get iPhones.
Yeah, it's a direct line.
Okay.
But so then why did we go to insects? Why are we using insects as like the case for aliens? And this is where I went and talked to Professor Dan Hassler-Forrest at Utrecht University. And we talked about like, what are the roots of like insect aliens? And
okay,
this is like the kind of bits that we came from. So first there's colonial roots. So early colonists categorized indigenous peoples as different species in the past.
Ew.
Yeah, ew. But they're often infantilized or thought as primitive or lacking the emotional capacity that Europeans had for themselves. And that SF inherited this logic. So the alien as animal, like aliens that look like animals, is kind of part of that colonial imagination still coming, because as you'll find, aliens, whenever we write about them, are basically us writing about the other, about, people that we don't understand or people that are not like us.
So he's suggesting that the reason we tend to make aliens more like, oh, this alien is just a cat or this alien is just a dog is because we are either subconsciously or even overtly ascribing those kinds of features to like the natives.
Yeah, like in the past, in the past before we were talking about extraterrestrials, we'd be talking about like the animal people in like the sort of far off colonial places in the world. And so when we switched from those stories to alien stories, we kind of took that sort of like structure of story and applied it to this.
Huh. Okay.
And so there's just this like, this constant thing about like trying to do that. Then in the 20th century, we had the Cold War, and the insect became this sort of metaphor for communism because it was like inhuman, too rational, too calculating. And like a lot of like kind of Western attacks on communist countries was that they lacked humanity, right? That they were just these like cold, efficient machines that ran everything. And they, everything was like cold, efficient apartment buildings and like things like that. And
which is so funny as a propaganda, because like any kind of records that have come out of like the Soviet Union have proven just how wrong that impression is, that they're just as inefficient and human as the rest of us, and that their systems were falling apart just like ours were. Like,
yeah. This is why like this kind of sort of thing like Star Trek, like the Borg come more to mind, because that kind of more fits the fear of being subsumed by the collective or something.
Right. Although even there we had to, because that's too unimaginable as a human concept, we had to give them a pretty lady to be up at front, right?
Yeah, and now we're also kind of reimagining the Borg. We're like, actually, the Borg aren't so bad now. Now, what's her name? Alison Pill? Is that her name?
Is that which I'm not great with actor names.
She was Dr. Jurati in season 2 of Picard, and now she's like the Borg Queen.
Oh, yes. She became the new Borg Queen, right?
Yeah. And then and so it became like insects do have these like things like eusociality, right? Like bees and ants have this like these like collective conscious, like these not collective consciousness, but they work in these like intensely intense collectives that then is like an easy stand-in for the threat of like communism. And that is
Right.
and this is like the era that produced like Starship Troopers and the sort of bugs of Starship Troopers kind of as that like that kind of fear. And it's also just like the cultural water that like a lot of these, well, this is the time when a lot of these regression sessions were happening. So like this is what they were, this was like kind of where science fiction was and what people were afraid of when a lot of these hypnosis sessions that led to the Mantises came in.
Okay.
But there are also some interesting like attempts to undo it, like Verhoeven's crack at Starship Troopers, which has a lot of like subtle signs to show that the bugs aren't actually like evil villains. They're just animals, or they're just like another type of existing alien that they're actively papering over to justify continuing the Forever War. But also like Neil Blomkamp with District 9 took like this machinery that got very popular through like the American Hollywood circuit and then tried to turn it inside out, because like the American genre conventions have like an ideological furniture that domestic audience treat as invisible. So when Verhoeven's bugs were presented as evil through like the in-universe propaganda, they then turn out to actually be intelligent and have feelings and all that kind of stuff. But this
Right.
But the satire actually got kind of missed. For example, Elon Musk recently posted about Starship Troopers, unironically sort of buying into the rhetoric of it. Yeah.
Elon Musk is just like the poster child of liking the wrapper of a candy bar without actually like knowing what it tastes like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the District 9 spaceships were kind of fun and the alien guns were cool and stuff. Like, you completely missed the point, Elon Musk, if you were praising that film in any way.
It's a Torment Nexus thing. Do you know about that? Or
absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, I'll let him talk for himself, and I'll put a clip in here.
Oh, cool.
Okay, but now I'm going to try to give you a little bit about our dude who was doing all these things. But first, Stanford, you know where we're going with this.
I was wondering whether or not I would be subjected to this or not.
Do you like product?
And here's the problem: is I try to be a good anti-capitalist, but I do like a product, and I kind of like a service too.
Everyone loves a good product or service now and then. So let's take a real quick break for a product and or service. Okay, so let's talk about Mr. Jacobs. David Jacobs. That's it. Okay.
David Jacobs.
So David Jacobs is the guy behind it. And I'm going to go more into this with our next episode. But yeah, he's the primary figure responsible for formalizing the Mantis as overseer. Again, professor of history, UFO belief, specialization, and then taught a popular undergrad course on UFO abductions, and then did 900 hypnotic regression sessions, and published multiple books arguing that these sessions reveal like a real covert alien program, amongst other things that we'll talk about next week.
And I assume he believed in the UFO stuff before he started regressing people.
Yeah, it seems so. Anyways, the thing is that he actually wasn't that incompetent in his field beforehand. His dissertation on UFO culture and the work that he was trained to do is actually considered legitimate stuff, like legitimate history.
Okay.
So I don't know if this was some kind of like bit, but like he knew how to trace how Americans constructed belief systems around anomalous phenomena.
And that is genuinely a very interesting topic of discussion of like how does this stuff kind of permeate the culture? Yeah.
Man, you are so good at this, because the next bit is how did we actually get this idea in our culture? And it's worth like kind of noting like that the Mantis isn't actually as old as the classic gray, and we can kind of see the trend line. If you were to look at alien abductions less as like whether or not this is real and like what the cultural history of like this like fiction is, almost like it's some kind of like cognito hazard or something.
Right.
It's the gray alien is actually a much older concept. So like it became the dominant template for what an alien looks like. Based on the Betty and Barney Hill case.
Right, okay.
It then got into the TV, it got onto like TV, paperbacks, and tabloids through the 70s and 80s. But the Mantis came later, and it emerged because they pushed deeper as the narrative about demanded like a hierarchy. Like the gray became the worker, and so they needed somebody to work for. And the Mantis tier was added through that process, like a new layer that came in later.
So I guess like it's like a TV show where the bad guy was already defeated, so we had to like make a worse bad guy,
or just like elaborate a new direction. I'm not exactly sure how it like I don't know if there was like an intentional thing, but like it developed as I think that like people keep adding more details to the world.
Right.
So the first documented time of like having like a Mantis UFO literature came in 1957 in Cincinnati with a V-shaped UFO and a 3-foot tall praying mantis entity. So that was like one case though. And then nothing again until 1969.
Okay. Well, 3 feet tall seems more reasonable, right?
Yeah, slightly more reasonable, I guess. Yeah. That they saw a 3-foot tall praying mantis. We didn't see anything else again until 1969 in Massachusetts, where multiple witnesses saw, and one of them said they saw insectoid aliens inside a metal craft. So what we're seeing here is that people are projecting kind of models of reality, like frameworks and templates, onto this kind of thing. Because 1 year after that 1969 case, a British film with a wide release depicted giant kind of locust-like aliens who had genetically modified pre-humans and operated as a hive mind discovered beneath a city. And their influence persisted in culture as a kind of folk memory. So the film was based on a 1958 BBC serial, and the BBC serial was, for its time in the broadcast, one of the most widely watched things on British television.
Okay.
So there's like this like strong correlation between the emergence of insectoid-type alien reports and the kind of pattern that them showing up in television and media. So you can kind of see it enter into
right. There was like an old black and white film. I don't know if it's called Them, but it had like I think it was like basically they built a model town and then put real praying mantises on it. Like what year was that?
Oh, I don't know. But
I think it's called Them with an exclamation point because that's how old-timey movies were.
That sounds like the 50s or something like that, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was definitely black and white. I also have the internet.
Yeah, but
Them, 1954.
Oh boy, yeah. But we have seen images like this before. Like, for example, Barney Hill had, in his abduction experience that he also got under hypnosis, was very similar to something he had watched 12 days earlier on an episode of The Outer Limits, where he saw aliens with similar sort of thing.
Oh, perfect.
But it's not to like be like that science fiction directly inspires the UFO reports, but that these elements then kind of become part of their, like, again, as we talked about at the beginning, these are things that you watch on television. They become part of your imagination and your memory. And then give it some time or put yourself under hypnosis. And then the thing that labels it as fiction gets scrubbed off. And then those memories feel like they're like autobiographical and something that you actually experience.
Right. Okay.
So let's go back to the Mantis alien and let's look what was really constructed. Just to keep it 100 for everybody in the chat. The machine did a machine thing, and we had to stop recording for a couple minutes. But just so you understand what the flow.
I assume that was the Mantids coming in and trying to take us off the air because we're getting close to the truth here.
That's true. I turned myself into a Mantid to get myself through it. It was a disguise. Okay. Here's the thing. So when you look at like the cultural signifiers around these Mantids that they are so afraid of, what you see is like this class of like emotionally detached managers who see their population that they're managing as like this kind of resource that's just to be optimized, and workers who just execute their program without any ethics considerations. And then they just surveil everybody in a way that's just operating below conscious awareness. Their reproduction is monitored and controlled, and the population's just unaware to what extent their lives are being managed, unable to opt out, generating value for a system that does not recognize them as persons. So does this sound like anything in real life?
Yeah, we talked about it. It sounds like Soviet-era communism, like without any other possible analogy in the real world whatsoever.
For real. I do. That's a classic line of the what the reason why communism is bad, and then go on to explain what to
explain all the things that capitalism does to us. Yeah.
But the thing though is that, and this is the kind of part that I talked about. I talked about this a little bit earlier, but it didn't make any sense actually at that point. And it makes more sense here. Is that like the reason I think for this, and this is the big kind of thing about this is that capitalism is one of those things that's like impossible for humans to complete. Like the way the world is right now, it's too big for our mushy little brains to understand.
Right. Right. You have to go to college for years to learn it.
And even then, like, I think that there's like, kind of like with climate change, there's like these systems that are too large for like what our brains evolved to even be able to comprehend. Like in the way that we can't even comprehend $1 billion. Like,
sure.
We don't realize just how unjust our world is because we can't even comprehend the numbers that we're dealing with. And so in the same way, if you kind of harken back to earlier in the show, in the same way that we construct memories by taking some parts and then filling the rest in with what we expect, we're doing a little bit of that when we do a lot of conspiracy theories and stuff like UFOs and things like these Mantis aliens, where we're taking these vast systems that we don't really understand or that we can't really like grasp all of. And instead of putting like a, instead of like accepting that there's nobody in charge, that there is no thing at the center, we instead have to put a face on it. One of the things that when I was talking yesterday was about how in some ways the stuff with Jeffrey Epstein is like validating, not that it's not like something worth like, investigating and get to the bottom of, but like it will validate this mentality that now we just have like a face, a group of people that we can put all of the problems of the world on. And if we can just replace them, then everything will be fine. But if we don't keep the systems, if we don't take the systems out, these things will just reproduce themselves in various different iterations.
Right. Because the systems themselves are what are like, they are literally designed to funnel power into the hands of just a few people.
Yeah. Incentive structures and all that. So like, and this is like a thing that like is the big difference between like an analysis. Because I think that like, this is where like, because like, I like Marxist theory. I'm sure that nobody in this podcast is surprised by that. Like the thing where like Marxists and like conspiracy theorists can agree is that we've seen like the problems in the world and we know that like things that the way they aren't like working. It's just that when they're looking for what to do about it, they put a person or like a group or a ethnic group at the center of it. When like Marx, like 2 centuries ago, wrote that there is no like villain. There's no person who is operating all of this. Like capitalism's not some kind of planned thing. It's just a system that everybody plays a role in. And the incentive structures and the economic structures just turn people into like the managers who just operate and the people who are just seen as resources and the disposability of human. There's no like evil person but the problem is that with the way that we think, the way that our brains like to approach these things, we kind of need there to be one.
Right.
Like I feel like this is like the top movie that nobody has seen, but everybody has heard about. They Live.
I fucking love that movie.
Okay. So like, if we just have glasses,
it's got like a 10-minute fight scene between the Savage and that other guy.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe I'm wrong then. So, but the thing is that like, there's this idea that like, if we just see clearly enough, that we'll identify who the predators are that are hiding among us, and if we could just deal with them, then we're good. And I think that need is the thing that makes the Mantis show up in these things. Like, it's a face for a faceless system. Which is exactly what like because mantises and like insects feel so not like us, so alien, so other, that like fits that.
Right, and that's just like the Borg needed a queen. Like we as humans can't conceive of a system. We need a face to put to it.
Yeah, which I think made the Borg less interesting overall.
100%. Don't disagree at all.
Yeah. And so like, so that's the thing. And it's all like, we don't really kind of understand anymore how deeply we're all being surveilled, how intensely like that the people, like the systems that make this world run just don't value the humanity of humans in any capacity.
Right.
And so that's just going to keep happening. That's what that's the Mantis in a way. And so
the real Mantids were the exploitation we had along the way.
Exactly. We're just trying to put a face to like, we're trying to make a species or make a group out of what is essentially institutional logic. And if you want to make the world a better place, you have to dismantle the logic that creates that in the first place. You can't just, it's not just like a bad guy to take out. Or another way to look at it is like, because like conspiracy theorists never are like, so therefore we need to do something about it, unless it's like, and therefore we need fascism. But like for the most part, it's like, well, if there's like a person in charge and they're doing all this stuff and we don't like them, but there's also nothing we can do about it. So just knowing is going to be the thing that sets us free. And it's like, it's not.
It's a good first step.
Yeah. But the thing is that it takes away from the fact that we actually can do something about this. So, anytime you feel like I think that we need to it's so hard to do because we're so wired for it, but we need to stop seeing agency in like faceless systems and realize that there isn't a person at the center of it. There's no conspiracy. There's no anything. This is just economic structures, and humans and our culture and our politics are all just sort of like an emergent phenomenon that comes out of that.
Right.
If we want to change it, then we have to change the underlying economic structures that would then change the culture, that would then change the politics, not the other way around.
Right. And I guess it's just, it seems like it's easier for people to assume, and I don't know if this is a uniquely American perspective, but it seems like it's easier for people to assume that like the system will work once the right people are in charge of it, like completely ignoring or not understanding the fact that like the system as it's designed will always put the wrong people in charge, or if the right people are in charge, it will make them the wrong people.
Yeah, it's backwards, right? Like if you want to have this is what when communists say the really strange words like seizing the means of production. That's what that means. That means like the things that make the economy run are the things to go for, because you're not going to have the person at the top, things aren't going to get better until that problem is solved. Like you're not going to solve the inequalities of the world until you deal with because they're all emergent phenomenon. Like racism is a emergent phenomenon of our history of colonization and the fact that the logic of capitalism has led us to be able to exploit people with these completely meaningless physiological superficial differences, because we have this history of enslavement and colonization, which was brought by the idea of the logic of capitalism and capital growth. So you need to undermine and get rid of that system, that logic, before you're going to have the culture change the things. That's the sort of direction it goes. I'm sure that this is an extreme simplification of all of these things, but it is at least a way to approach it. It's like the big systemic thing. So yeah. So all we need to do to solve the world's problems is communism, everybody. Cool. Mic drop. We did it.
I think and maybe that's what the Mantids actually want. Did we think of that?
Ooh. Well, then if that's true, then I'm on Team Mantid.
Yeah, maybe they'll stop abducting us if we just do shit right. Like maybe they're the ones trying to make the communism happen.
Yeah. But I think this is the part that I think I like the most, and I think that there's hope for some of these people, because again, coming to the conclusion of the aliens starts with an acknowledgement that things in the world are wrong. They're just not quite.
Absolutely.
They're not quite getting the last little bit. And so hang on to that feeling. My reply to you is not that, is not that everything is wrong or everything's actually fine. Don't worry about it. But that you're pointing your skepticism in the wrong direction. And that,
right. We need you to stay mad, but just at a different target.
Mm-hmm. And if you want to stay mad,
your anger is justified.
Yeah. And if you want to stay mad, you can point that mad at Props Not Aliens on Blue Sky. Or Stanford, where do people find your stuff?
So, yes, I am one of the hosts of a small Star Trek rewatch podcast called Captain's Log Supplemental. We're rewatching every episode of Star Trek in chronological canon order, which means we started with some of the worst stuff in Enterprise. But right now we're about to start the second season of Strange New Worlds. You can find us at, all of our links and stuff are on podcls.com. But really, if you just look Captain's Log Supplemental up on your podcast thing of choice, then, you'll probably find us. I mean, we're out there. Tristan, I lost all of my data in like a huge hack like about 3 hours ago. So like if I wanted to find you on whatever, how do I do that?
Well, thank you for asking. I run a channel called Step Back where I talk about the intersection of the past and present and the world and politics and often call for the dismantling of capitalism. And I am just now coming back after a year hiatus because I just left my day job. So I should have a new video coming out, inshallah, tomorrow, which means I'm probably going to be working all night on the video because it's not quite done yet. But
sure.
But yeah, there's going to be, by the time this comes out, there should be multiple videos. So you can go to Step Back on YouTube. Also, I'll give a shout out to Scott and NerdSync because watching his videos helps support a new bebe in the world. Speaking of supporting bebes, that our podcast has multiple ways that you can support the now growing Step Back or the new growing It's Probably Not Aliens family with Scott having a new baby and my slightly older one. By either signing up for Nebula using the link nebula.tv/probably-not-aliens. And if you sign up for Nebula, you'll get episodes early, you get an extra Q&A episode at the end of the season. And also you get access to all of Nebula, which is like a whole like library of awesome stuff. If you want to support the paying Max and Stanford Fund, you could go to patreon.com/probs.aliens. The project for that is to first pay our editors, second pay for equipment, and then we are the third concern on that. But if you don't have money because the Mantids have exploited you of all of your surplus value, then please you can review our podcast on whatever podcatcher you're using, because that kind of stuff is how the show gets found. And more importantly is you need to tell other people about the show. You need to go tell your friends, your enemies, your insects about what's going on about this show, because that word of mouth is the best way to do it. And you can send those people to probsnotaliens.com. Whew. Okay.
Awesome.
I think that's all for this time. But yeah, until then,
I'm Stanford.
And I'm Tristan Johnson. The truth is out there.
Probably.
Ooh. Oh, okay.
So
we did it.
But like, if I wanted a mantid to visit me at night, how do I get that to happen?
Okay, well that's between you and what's it called? You and your OnlyFans accounts or whatever.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a different part of the internet. All right, I'll go look there.
That's a different show.